So today we're supposed to cover fashion illustrations and editing them digitally, right? So scanning and cleaning up a hand-drawn fashion illustration. Do you guys have any questions about this specifically that I could address in this lecture, right from the beginning? I know you've probably had to do this maybe a little bit in some of your fashion illustration classes. All right, try to think of questions. I'm breaking stuff. Try to think of questions while I talk about it. We're gonna go over putting a repeating pattern on them, coloring them, and mostly just cleaning them up and everything, and then getting them into Illustrator. So I remember I made this design board, and I made this layout. So we're getting towards our layout that's going to be printed, right? Right. And our layout has to have a multiple of 4 pages, right? Okay. So I actually have 3 extra blank pages in here so that I would have the correct number of pages in my thing. If I wanted to print this right now, I would have to have at least 3 blank pages in it, just because of the function of these books, right? And we're designing on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. I'm probably going to say all this again, but each of these are 8.5 by 11 because our 11 by 17 tabloid printer, when you fold it in half, makes 8.5 by 11. So that's why we're designing on 8.5 by 11, right? And it makes, if you're printing double-sided on an 11 by 17 page, when you fold that in half, you kind of have 4 pages. And that's why we have to have a multiple of 4 pages. Okay, so I wanted to get my fashion illustrations on here with no background on them. That's one of my goals as well. Because I think you're probably going to be designing in Illustrator, right? Photoshop is a little bit harder to see your whole layout all in one like this. It's nice that Illustrator allows us to see it all at once. Okay, InDesign is a little interesting. I'm just going to create a new InDesign document super quick. Hi, Callie.
Hi.
Oh no. So when you open up Illustrator in, File, New Document, but it's not doing the pages like I'm used to, actually. Never mind, sorry. InDesign is unimportant. InDesign might have been a good thing for you guys to lay this out in, but we learned Illustrator, so Illustrator it is. Illustrator is pretty good at what it does for this level. Okay, so in Photoshop, I'm going to open up my illustrations, and we're going to clean them up.
Shouldn't we be designing on horizontal pages that are 11 by 17?
So our printer will know how to print these in order. So you can design them in order, how you would see them on this. You don't have to worry about how, thinking about the book and how the book would actually be laid out. That's what the printer is for. Because, yeah, so you're saying, should you be designing them like this, with the front and back cover on the same page? No, the printer knows how to do it. So it's going to put them on the right spots for it to open up like this, right? Does that make sense?
How would you even...
How would you what? That's what I wanted to show you in InDesign, but I'm not super familiar with InDesign, and InDesign does this thing where it puts the pages together in spreads, but for some reason it's not doing the spreads right now. It's just doing normal document pages. So I'm sorry, that is completely useless. I'm actually gonna quit it and maybe we can try it again later. What is good to think about though is that like, if this page is your cover, then these two pages are actually going to be touching. So like we could even take the artboard tool and like make them touching in order to get a better idea of what that would actually look like. I didn't do a very good job of moving it over straight. Right? And then the next two pages are also actually a spread. It's called a spread when your two pages are touching like this. So you can think about it this way if that's what you mean, Janet, right? Like you could think about them in spreads across the 11 by 17 page because you are going to be seeing like a whole 11 by 17 page when it's open. You know?
I guess I just don't know how to print it so it makes it look like a book.
We are going to learn next week. We're going to go to the thing and print. So don't, yeah. I'm with you. I actually I haven't printed on this printer either, but I know that like I've designed books before for publishing and you don't design them like, you design them in order of the pages, like 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't design them like how the book would actually be printed. The printer does that. Whether it's a physical printing machine or a human who is the printer, someone does that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe next week I don't think I'm wrong though. Because the PDF examples that we have are all 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, like all in a row, right? Like these guys are all just one page at a time that we can view in the PDF, and they must have printed correctly at some point. Okay. All right, Photoshop. I have some photos that don't 100% support my design board here, and neither do they, neither are they original garments. They're illustrations that I've done of either Dolce & Gabbana, or this one is Nike, and then these two are Dolce & Gabbana. So I already have this one in there from last class, so I'll focus on her really quick, although I hate her head. I don't know. I'm not super happy with these illustrations. I like this one. Anyway, let's brighten this up. Who remembers how to kind of add brightness to a whole image overall? Come on, we're going to do interactive Photoshop quiz. Yeah, adjustments. So you can go to image adjustments and do it through here, and that will work, but it will be permanent, right? There would be no way to like edit this adjustment setting later on. So the way I really like to do it is with your adjustment layers. So I can choose this little symbol here. It's normally around automatically, and I can choose brightness and contrast. And I can like up that. And then I also normally play with levels in order to even things out, right? And what levels is showing me here with this little graph is that there's a lot of this color, which is like kind of a medium to light gray in here, and there isn't almost any pure white. So what I can do is tell it that the pure white should be closer to this amount of gray, which brightens the whole thing up and kind of removes the gap between, like the gap in the range. And then we can adjust the center. So what I've told it, right, is that all of the colors that are on the right are actually, like, that are lighter are actually squashed into like this smaller range of colors that was originally on the board, if that makes sense. Which can be a nice way to even things out. There's so many adjustment layers, hue and saturation, right? I can up the saturation a little. But you can go kind of crazy doing this stuff. So I am actually going to crop her out, and I wanted to talk about the polygonal lasso, the lasso tool. So I have been tending to use the magnetic lasso tool lately. For those of you who use Photoshop, what's your favorite lasso tool? Magnetic, yeah. Anyone, is that everyone's favorite? Magnetic. So I have recently discovered a way to also toggle between the other two lasso tools that I just wanted to talk about really quick. So we'll see how far. I'm just going to go around the Vespa with this, and then we'll add the rest of it in. So almost done. So I recently learned that if you are using the regular lasso tool, which you have to hold down the whole time, right? You have to it can be really laborious. You hold one solid click the whole time. If you hold Alt and release while you're using this tool, so I'm holding Alt and I'm going to release, it turns into the polygonal lasso tool. So if you need to adjust while you're using the regular lasso tool, you can hold Alt and it will become the polygonal tool, and then you can just click and drag again and it becomes the regular lasso tool, right? So I'm actually going to hit Command Z because I lost this selection. So I am just using the regular lasso tool, and oh, my arm's getting kind of in a weird spot and I need to adjust, so I'm going to hold Alt and I can release. No hands, Mom. Oh God. I can click around what I need to click around, and then if I need it to be the regular lasso tool again, I just start dragging, clicking and dragging. I learned this on the Wacom tablets. It's a lot easier to use if you know how to toggle between them. I didn't realize this was an option, honestly, until this year. So something like this. So once you have it all selected, I am going to have to delete the background, and right now I'm on a layer called background, so is it going to let me delete the background properly? The answer is no, right? So I'm going to hit select inverse, and now I'll be selecting everything else besides my lady and my Vespa. And if I hit delete right now, it's going to ask me to fill it with a pattern or black or white or whatever, but it's not going to show me that crosshatch that means that the background is really transparent. So it doesn't like letting background layers be transparent is the key here. So you just have to double click on it and hit OK, and then it is transparent. Okay. I definitely lost some of the Vespa wheel there. I'm just going to go and, actually this is probably the wrong way. All right, so now we have that checkerboard in the background that means that the background's transparent. Anyone remember what file type you save it as in order to preserve a transparent background? Anyone remember? PNG. Thank you. So I might clean it up more. I might grab my burn tool, right, and darken up her face, darken up some of these moments that I don't think they made it quite to the level of darkness. Anyway, we can choose File, Save As, and choose PNG. Okay, and then if we open that up in Illustrator, in file place maybe. Place. PNG. Place. She will automatically have no background. We don't have to like futz with trying to, I don't know, make a clipping mask around her or however you would want to do it. She's already transparent. Okay. So what if you wanted to color a illustration in black and whites and make it color? I am going to select around this woman really quick. When I'm using the polygonal lasso tool on something on like a fine pencil drawing like this, I often end up having to lower this width setting up here to something like, 4 pixels so that it will really take notice of any lines that are small, right? These affect the settings that it picks up when you're running along your illustration. So where before it might have kind of ignored this black line, it picks it up no problem right now. You can hit delete to go backwards with the lasso tool, just like the polygonal lasso tool. Okay. I really actually just want her garments, so we'll have to clean that up in a second. Although I started on her leg. So before I add color, I should probably actually clean her up, get rid of any smudges that I don't like, or anything like that. So because I want to kind of take a step in another direction for a second, I am actually going to save this selection, which I know we've addressed before. But so like I've made this selection and I want to come back to it, I can go to Select and Save Selection. And then later I'll be able to choose Load Selection and get this exact selection back. So I can call this body suits, I don't know. Okay, so I can deselect that for a second, Command D. And I'm going to grab the spot healing brush, which is a little bit different than the clone tool. The spot healing brush allows you to pick out moments and just like draw over them like a brush, and then it kind of smooths them. So like this, I have like a little hatch mark here from where I made her head measurements. I can draw over that and it smooths it right away, right? Kind of blends it in with the background. Same right here with this hatch mark, all gone, right? So all of that can be good. She looks okay. Like I guess there's actually 2 lines up here that I might get rid of, but all of this is just for example. Like I could try to use the spot healing brush here. I don't know what it's going to do. That doesn't look that great, so I might end up using the clone stamp tool there instead. Does anyone remember what the clone tool does? Yeah, you do. Come on. It clones pixels. So if I hold Alt and click on this shoe, I can come up here and I can start copying the shoe. So we can use it for fine detail and for cleaning up moments like this. So I can pick out, I can make it a lot smaller, and then I can pick out the color right next to it and then come in, and then we know it's like pretty much the exact same color as the background, right? We're not relying on the clone healing or the spot healing brush to choose the color for us. We're picking the colors with the clone tool. It's just more precise. All right. Let me grab that selection again. Select, load selection. And I am going to make a new layer and fill it. What color should I make it, guys? Come on. Pick a color.
Purple.
Okay. We did this color magenta in the last class. Is that good? Cool. So we're going to immediately change it to multiply so we can still see the garment underneath. And actually, I can take a second here, and I don't even have to do it with the selection tool or anything. I can just clean up the edges on this. So I can grab the eraser tool, and on that layer, I can just start erasing. Because of the way we're going to add the shading and like color in the next moments, I can just easily clean these guys up. So we're going to use clipping masks to draw like highlights and shadows on her. So I'm going to make a new layer, and just to demonstrate, I'm going to draw a big line through it on this layer. Right? We're going to get rid of that, but with this layer selected, my new top layer, I am going to go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And what this is going to do is it's going to force this layer into a clipping mask of the last layer. So it crops it to the layer. So now, if I, let me get rid of all of the stuff on it. If I wanted to add in my highlights in here, I can do it without worrying about staying inside the lines. So this is the way that like professional artists render. They make a lot of clipping masks, right? So I could, and now any layer that I'm going to make in between here is similarly going to be masked, okay? So if I go back on my layer that's kind of defining it and choose new, this also has that little arrow next to it, which means it's kind of bound to this lower shape. So on this layer, I could choose a darker color, and I could try adding some shadows with brushes on the right layer. Right? I'm doing this very simply. You might spend more time thinking about where the light is coming from. But this is the idea. Yeah.
How many illustrations do we use?
Just one. And like, you don't even have to clean it up nearly this much. We are,
Do they need to be hand-drawn?
no, they can be drawn in Illustrator or on Photoshop or whatever, or on your tablets. I don't know, how did you want to draw it?
I've been working a lot in Illustrator.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I just wanted to address how you would clean it up in Photoshop, because I think some teachers are requiring you guys to do it. All right, we're gonna pause here, and we are going to take a, what is it?
Valuation.
Valuations. You might, add textures to your flats in Illustrator and then be intimidated to actually try to render that by hand, like rendering a repeating pattern by hand is just, laborious. So throwing it on her in Photoshop is a good option. So I'm just going to select around her socks, and we'll throw a pattern on her socks. What kind of pattern should I put on her socks, guys? A paisley? How's that? Well, yeah, paisley. So I actually took these illustrations that I did. These are all of like Nike for Serena Williams. I did a series like this one. The other two you saw weren't from this series. And I like animated them. I added video to them as texture instead of just an image. You can do all sorts of stuff in Photoshop.
For some reason, I am really challenged when it comes to hemming.
So, I'm with those selected. I'm actually just gonna choose save selection, I think, and we'll say that sucks. Okay, so let me find my Paisley image. It's nice when you're searching for images to filter them for something that's labeled for reuse. But I don't know. Just don't let me know otherwise, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how big a deal it is really in design boards. But in my work, like, and if I'm posting something on Instagram, I really do prefer for like all the patterns and images to be my own. So I pasted this. This is interesting. I pasted it in the middle of these layers that were also clipping masked. And now it's clipping masked to that layer, which is just, I don't know, mildly interesting. So we're gonna move that out. Yeah, there she is. Okay, so I'll just transform it until it fits over one of the socks. Something like that. And I am going to grab that selection that I saved of her socks that I did really quickly, and we can choose their socks. And I actually don't need this one right now, so I can hold Alt and subtract it really quick. And then if I went to, so I had you guys do, or I did layer, create new clipping mask for the last one, and what that does is it turns a layer into a clipping mask, or it puts a clipping mask of the layer beneath it onto your layer. And we want to make a clipping mask from the selection, and my favorite way to do that, it's just a little bit different than what I said before, is to click on this little symbol, which looks a little like the Japanese flag, and now it's clipped to it. Right now, if I click and drag it around, it's joined, right? And we just click this little link. We click the link, right, in order to unlink them, and then this side has to be selected, not the clipping mask side, but this side, the image side, and then we can move it all around if we needed to get the placement right, and we could also go to Edit, Transform, Warp, or whatever, and try to make it feel more like it's wrapping around the leg, which is a little tricky in this case. I don't know if it's gonna. That looks pretty good. Kind of. Looks like something anyway. So I'll do that really quickly again. We can paste the image, transform it so it's the right size. Command T. Rotate it. Then get that selection of the legs. And clip it. So the clipping mask tool right here, little flag. And then if we needed to, we could unlink the image from its clipping mask and warp it. So that's pretty straightforward. Can you guys, oh, see, I'm accidentally transforming the clipping mask and not the image underneath it because this side of the little thumbnail was selected, right? So right now it's transforming like the whole thing, and actually we can see that it's not transforming the image. It's leaving the image as is. So I'll hit escape, make sure this is selected, and then I could warp it. transform, warp. Yeah, so you only have to have one illustration, and it can be any medium that you want, so digital or regular hand-drawn. So if you're going to do it in Illustrator, I normally start from a croquis in Illustrator. So like I would find a croquis or load one of my own hand-drawn croquis and then start using the pen tool to trace over that. And you guys know how to use the pen tool, so I'm not going to go crazy trying to draw something right now. Your illustrations don't have to be on the front page. In this example, we have this book, this printed book. They are on the front page, but in some of these other examples we have from that Google Drive folder.
Can we have our mood and trend board in the book?
Yes, yes, you can. Yes. I think that it would be good to have your mood board like right here at the beginning after your title page. Or maybe even adapt if your mood board is like, you know, not like crazy busy or something, you could adapt it into a title page. This one has the illustrations in the middle. And for whatever reason, I think they probably did color these digitally, judging by how flat they are. And they've chosen to show the 3 different colorways in there. Just so everyone, just to like review the final project again, looking at Moodle and then looking at my examples all together. Where's Moodle? There you are. Oh no. So you have to have 10 outfits. I don't have 10 in this example, but you have to have front and back view for 10 different outfits. You can have 3 colorways for each outfits. So I have chosen in this layout to show my colorway options as swatches, right? So I have my 3 colorway options for my jeans here, my 3 colorway options for my sweater. In this book, I don't know if you guys noticed this when I handed it around, they've decided to do tiny versions of their flats in the other colorways. And I didn't realize that was what was happening in here because a lot of their colorways are very similar. On this page, it's pretty obvious. She's got like a different pattern in the shirts over here. So that is an option. I don't particularly think this is like the best example of like a beautiful layout, but this is an example of the product that you're going to make. So maybe do like you could display them on the garment, but I would probably have made the original bigger, like significantly bigger, and I probably would never have put a striped background on anything. I think the striped background in this is optically tiring. Okay, so I also just wanted to touch really quick, I guess, on how I made this background. It's very straightforward. In this case, I found this image online, and it was open source. I like made sure when I searched that it was labeled for reuse. And then I just made a matching gradient for it. So this is just a simple gradient, and I picked the colors out of this original image.
How do you change the color of the gradient?
Yeah, we can do a little bit of a gradient. Yeah, so if I wanted to change the color of this one, which already has a gradient applied, it's pretty straightforward. I just double click on these and then I can choose a swatch. The problem is like it doesn't give you a color picker option in here, which Photoshop does in a lot of places. But there's no color picker option. So you do kind of want to make a swatch first. So I think when I was making this gradient, I like picked out the dark gray in here, or sorry, the dark orange, and I made a swatch. And then I picked out the white match and I made a swatch. And then you grab the gradient tool and you can like click to apply a gradient, right, to any shape as long as it's selected. So I had this shape selected and I grab the gradient tool and then click on it. And then I can double click on these and choose my saved colors. Make sure they're exact. And then to turn it 90 degrees in this case, because gradients always, the linear gradients always come out like left to right, you just click on the angle guy and we can turn it 90 degrees. And then it's top to bottom. So yeah, if I wanted to make this circle gradient, I can change the gradient type from linear to radial. And then I can get rid of one of the little sliders at the bottom by like just clicking and dragging it off. And then I can click on one of these and choose another color if I wanted to. If I wanted to add a third color, I just have to hover over the bottom of this little gradient and click. So it gets like a plus symbol next to my mouse. Anyway. God, that's terrible. Okay. Yeah, so I mean this is looking like something, this little grouping, and this would print out with this on the front page, and then this would be the first spread as you opened the pages, and the second spread, and then the third spread. And you need a multiple of 8. I probably should have done something like put this layer, this background on its own layer, right, in the back, and then copied and pasted it across. I just worked all on one layer, which was probably like more work than it was worth. It would have been better to be able to lock my background layer. And it's also nice to kind of get it set up ahead of time, so you know you have to have either 8 or 12 or 16 pages, so it might be good to just kind of decide. Are you gonna go for 16? Are you gonna go for 12? And like get all of your artboards out there all at once.
We're working on 8.5 by 11.
8.5 by 11, yes. And it has to be a multiple of 4. And yes, it's gonna be a book someday. And then the last class was like, we're gonna sell these as magazines. So you're all set for your future career as a zine publisher. All right, so let's go for a real break now, I guess. Unless you guys have questions about fashion illustration or anything that I haven't answered yet. Okay, all right, so let's take a little break, or you can keep working, and then I'll meet with you individually when we get back, and you can work on your final project.